The headline hit global feeds before dawn. Ibrahim Traoré declines meeting with Jacob Zuma. No explanation. No official statement. Just 6 words that sent shockwaves through the corridors of power across Africa. By morning, every news anchor was asking the same question. Why? In Johannesburg, cameras surrounded Zuma's convoy as he exited a private residence, offering only a faint smile. In Ouagadougou, reporters waited outside the presidential palace, their mics trembling under the desert wind. The silence from Ibrahim Traoré's office spoke louder than any speech could. At first, many thought it was a scheduling issue, a diplomatic formality postponed. But as the hours passed, the truth began to take shape. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a message. Because when Ibrahim Traoré says no, it's never about convenience. It's about principle. Within 24 hours, the entire continent was talking. Analysts filled airwaves debating the refusal. It's unprecedented, one said. 2 former and current leaders of Africa, one extending a hand, the other rejecting it. Others whispered, it was a quiet revolution, a new generation drawing a line between legacy and accountability, but behind the headlines was a quieter truth, one that started long before the cameras rolled. 2 weeks earlier, Jacob Zuma had formally requested a private meeting with Traoré. The stated purpose was unity, to discuss cooperation between Southern and Western African nations amid shifting alliances. The letter was polite, the tone respectful, but for Traoré, it stirred something deeper, a reflection of what leadership should mean and what it must never become. Inside the presidential palace, that letter sat on his desk for hours. He read it once, twice. Then he folded it neatly and placed it beneath a stack of reports. He didn't reject it immediately, not out of hesitation but contemplation. That night, as the sun set over Ouagadougou, Ibrahim sat by the window of his modest office. The city lights flickered beyond the glass. His advisors had left. Only his aide-de-camp remained, a young soldier who had followed him since the days before the revolution. "Should I prepare the reply, sir?" the aide asked. Traoré didn't answer immediately. He looked out toward the horizon, the same horizon he'd once marched toward with nothing but conviction and a borrowed uniform. He finally spoke, softly. "Do you remember why we started this journey?" The aide nodded. "For dignity, sir." "For dignity," Traoré repeated. "And dignity means we do not bow to what we know is wrong." He turned, his eyes calm but firm. "Tell them my answer is no." The aide hesitated. "Should I explain why?" "Not yet," Traoré said. "Let the world ask first." And the world did. As soon as the refusal became public, every theory emerged. Some said it was political strategy. Others claimed it was personal resentment. But those who knew Ibrahim knew better. His decisions were rarely about politics. They were about conscience. The following day, footage from a press briefing in Ouagadougou went viral. A journalist asked, "Mr. President, why refuse to meet a fellow African leader when unity is needed most?" Traoré paused before answering. His expression didn't shift. His tone was composed, deliberate. "Unity," he said, "is not built by shaking every hand. It's built by standing for what the people deserve." The room went silent. Cameras clicked. His words echoed across social media. In South Africa, Jacob Zuma's spokesperson released a statement expressing disappointment, calling the refusal regrettable at a time when African solidarity is essential. But for many, it wasn't disappointment they saw. It was a passing of eras, because the old Africa, the one of endless compromises and secret handshakes, was being replaced by something different. Something raw, principled, unafraid. Days later, a leaked transcript emerged, an internal meeting where Traore addressed his cabinet in private. It was never meant to be public, but it changed the narrative forever. He said, "I was offered the chance to meet a man who led his people before. But leadership is not about how long you held the chair. It's about how deeply you serve the truth while sitting in it. I have no anger toward Mr. Zuma, but my country will not stand beside anyone who sees power as a throne rather than a responsibility. Africa deserves leaders who listen, not rulers who remember." That single paragraph was quoted in every newspaper from Dakar to London. Some praised it, others called it defiance, but to many it was integrity in its purest form. 3 nights later, as global pressure mounted, Traore finally broke his silence publicly. He agreed to a rare televised address, one broadcast not just to his people but to the world. He stood alone behind a simple wooden podium. No flags, no grand backdrop, just a nation seal in his voice. "I am not here to divide Africa," he began. "I am here to protect what still unites it. Honesty, dignity, and the courage to say no when the world expects you to say yes." He paused, letting the words breathe. "We cannot build a new Africa by repeating the mistakes of the old one. Respect does not mean silence. Courtesy does not mean compromise." His speech was calm, but each sentence carried the weight of generations. Some will say I disrespected a man who once led his country, but I say this: we honor our past not by repeating it, but by learning from it. The future will not forgive those who pretend change is impossible. By the end of the broadcast, there was no applause, only stillness. Across the continent, millions watched with quiet respect. In Johannesburg, Zuma reportedly turned off the TV halfway through. But in classrooms in Nairobi, universities in Lagos, and streets of Bamako, people shared one phrase online: he didn't refuse a meeting. He defended a principle. A few days later, Traore received a handwritten note from an elderly teacher in Ghana. It read, "My president is not from my country, but he speaks for my children." That letter sat on his desk, right where Zuma's invitation had once been. He smiled faintly as he read it, then folded it carefully, tucking it into his journal. Sometimes, leadership isn't about who you meet. It's about what you refuse to become, and that's why, when history remembers this moment, it won't just recall a canceled meeting. It will remember a continent beginning to find its voice again. Because for Ibrahim Traoré, the refusal wasn't an act of defiance. It was an act of love, for Africa, for its people, and for the truth that must outlive every leader. The world watched, and for the first time in a long time, Africa didn't flinch.